I exposed my best friend's betrayal at their wedding, and everyone was stunned. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. The quartet hit the downbeat as I cued the truth on screen. I stood in the wings with a thumb drive and a pulse that thudded in my neck like a second metronome. I'm Jamie. Lists, labels, spare safety pins. Born organized, appointed friend of honor, because Morgan said I could make chaos look choreographed. She wasn't wrong. I color-coded our calendar, wrangled unstable vendors, and fielded texts at 2 a.m. about napkin folds. 30 minutes from vows in a glass-walled ballroom, I held a chain of receipts and messages that would either save Daniel or destroy what little I had left with Morgan. I knew what I stood to lose. 10 years of friendship, half our shared circle, and the certainty that helping someone always helps. I promised to save the day. But saving the day can mean burning the decorations. The projector hummed at my elbow. The DJ, a kind man named Arturo, asked if my montage surprise was still at the top of the playlist. Maybe, I said. Out on the balcony, Morgan turned her face to the golden skyline like a person practicing happiness. My cousin Priya tapped my sleeve. We verified the metadata, she whispered. Timestamps, device IDs, locations. If you show this, there's no walking it back. Priya's calm always steadied me, but today it only clarified the drop beneath my feet. Mr. Ruiz, the venue manager, rolled a spare screen into the anteroom and pretended not to hear. Daniel's mother, and passed me a folded note that said, "Thank you for taking care of details." I tucked it into my pocket like proof I wasn't only here to break things. The string players reached the measure we'd marked for the processional rehearsal. Someone asked if we were ready. I said, almost. My voice didn't shake. The file icon pulsed. The truth waited to be dragged into the light, and so did I. The processional doors clicked as someone tested the latch. I breathed, counted 4, and made my choice in silence. Then Morgan's sister blocked the aisle with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The music swelled as my thumb hovered over the space bar, frozen by a voice behind me that said my name like a warning. I turned, and Morgan's smile had the sharpness of a drawn blade. We met sophomore year in a dorm hallway lined with whiteboards and empty pizza boxes. Morgan breezed through life then, borrowing my highlighters and calling me Spreadsheet Jamie, like it was a title and not a tease. We built an elastic friendship. She reached, I caught. She leapt, I packed snacks. She liked my steadiness the way a tightrope walker likes a net, best if never needed. Over time, microcuts formed. Your life is cute, she'd say, like a tiny house trend. When I got promoted at the nonprofit, she called it adorable stability, the way one might praise a well-behaved dog. Last month, after I lugged 3 crates of decor up her 4-story walk-up, she laughed. I don't know how you stay single with those triceps, but keep doing favors for me. It's working. I smiled because the florist was waiting. That's what I did, smile, move, fix. Even when her jokes landed like coins flicked at a busker. We had good stuff too. Late-night ramen during finals, screaming along to Fleetwood Mac in a rented Corolla. The day she called, crying, and I brought grocery store tulips and stood in her kitchen until the sobs ran out. So when she asked me to be friend of honor, I said yes with my whole chest. I made a binder. I typed vendor contacts. I even built a what-if tree for rain, DJ illness, or a caterer fire. The truth is I wanted to be indispensable. I wanted a job at the center of a life event that said I mattered. 2 nights ago, during the rehearsal, she hugged me tight enough to bruise. You're the only adult in the room, she whispered. It felt like a blessing. Then, as we lined up for practice, she said into the mic, and Jamie will make sure nothing small derails my perfect day. People laughed. I laughed too. It wasn't until the check arrived that I realized the joke cut a little deeper than usual. The server set it down, and Morgan slid it toward me with 2 fingers, smiling. Her smile didn't fade when I said my card was already maxed. First red flags can look like confetti, colorful, harmless, everywhere. On Friday morning, the ring box went missing for 30 agonizing minutes. Morgan waved it off as quirky. Then her hairstylist texted that the location had changed, again, and sent a pin to a hotel 2 blocks from the venue, not the bridal suite. Less noise, Morgan said, tugging a curl. More light. Fine. I rerouted the makeup artist and the photographer, who sighed and said, "This is why we do buffers." A florist invoice revision arrived at 11:26 a.m., reducing centerpieces by 2 and adding a private bouquet, with white orchids for pickup at 12:40. "Surprise for Daniel," Morgan said, which didn't track with his sunflower obsession. At 12:51, I passed the photo booth being calibrated. The test strip showed 3 blank panels and 1 accidental frame of shoes I recognized as Morgan's. The timestamp didn't match her location share. I told myself to breathe, that weddings run on strange time. Then a hushed phone call in the hallway. Morgan's voice warm, low, a laugh I'd only heard in rooms where she wanted something. "No, after," she said. "Trust me, the paperwork is airtight." When she saw me, she mouthed, "Vendor," and put a hand over the receiver like we still did that in 2025. I texted Priya, "Am I spiraling?" Priya replied with a sticker of a cat peeking around a corner, and then, "Probably not. Watch for patterns." The ring box reappeared, dramatic as a dove from a sleeve. Morgan kissed it and held it high like a trophy. Guests poured into the hotel lobby with textured gift bags and shoes they'd regret. The rehearsed serenity settled over everything. For a second, I believed the day would bend to our planning. Then a rideshare driver approached me with a tablet and said, "You left this in my back seat at 2:12. It wasn't mine. It was a slim, rose-gold device with a case I'd seen on Morgan's kitchen island last month. The lock screen lit up with a preview that used Daniel's nickname. At the rehearsal dinner, Morgan made a toast shaped like a compliment and sharpened like a dart. "To Jamie," she said, "who keeps us grounded, because some of us dream too big." Laughter, cameras, clinking glass. I smiled, heat working up my neck. After, someone airdropped me a photo without a name. Morgan in a hotel hallway with a suitcase, timestamped 11:48 p.m. Captioned, "Room 904, alias confirmed." My phone flagged the sender as unknown nearby. I looked up, the bridesmaids were whispering. When I asked Morgan about the room number, she rolled her eyes. "Hair team," she said. "Don't make it a thing." Minutes later, a PDF slid into my iMessage from the same unknown, a receipt for a private services suite, paid by a card with Morgan's initials. Check-in 12:05 a.m. Check-out noon today. Guest name E. Howell. Daniel's business partner is Ethan Howell. My stomach tipped. I excused myself and stepped outside into an alley that smelled like lo mein and rain. I dialed Priya. "I need your brain," I said. We met at her apartment after the dinner. She loaded the tablet the rideshare driver had returned and found a messaging app folder tucked behind a calculator icon. The chat showed heart emojis and a gallery icon labeled booth. Priya mirrored the screen to her TV and froze when a thumbnail displayed Morgan's hand on a forearm tattoo I knew belonged to Ethan. "Could be old," I said fast. Priya shook her head. "The EXIF says last night, 2319, she said. "Also the device geotag is the hotel." We cataloged everything. The airdropped photo, the suite receipt, the chat thumbnails. I opened the florist's revised invoice again. The private bouquet pickup aligned exactly with the suite checkout. My breath came in tight sips. I heard my own voice say, "Don't be dramatic. Confirm before you ruin lives." Priya exhaled. "We verify in the morning," she said. "And if it's true, we decide who deserves protection." I thought of Daniel's easy smile and how he always carried water bottles for everyone else. At 1:07 a.m., Ethan texted the tablet. "Contracts after ceremony. Keep Daniel unsuspecting." By dawn, isolation arrived with coffee. Morgan's sister, Kelsey, intercepted me outside the bridal suite. "Jamie," she said, "thank you for everything, but please, no theatrics. You know how Morgan gets if someone steals her spotlight." She smiled like it was a joke and then lowered her voice. "Don't ruin her day." Inside, the air smelled like hairspray and nerves. Morgan kissed my cheek and called me my anchor. She slid the friend of honor sash across my chair like a bribe. When I reached for the schedule, she plucked it away. "I've got it," she said. Tasks I'd managed for months were reassigned to bridesmaids whose only recent accomplishment was pre-gaming without smudging lipstick. Priya texted, "Meet me in sacristy, quiet room near chapel. 10 minutes. I slipped out with the tablet tucked in a manila envelope, passing guests who wanted small talk and the DJ who wanted to know if the projector would be used for the love story. "Maybe," I said. The sacristy was still and cool. Priya had her laptop open, cables coiled like patient snakes. I pulled the ride history from Morgan's rideshare, she said. Pick up, 11:40 p.m. her apartment. Drop, hotel back entrance, 11:52. Return at 1:06 a.m. Another ride this morning, 12:36 p.m. Same location. She slid me a printed timeline with locations and durations highlighted. Also, she added, I copied the photo booth test strip. The blank frames are from a sensor obstruction, but the fourth image caught a foot crossing the curtain gap. Ethan's Vans, paint splatter pattern. We stared at the sequence like a crime board. What if she panicked? I asked. Cold feet, stupid choices, but not malicious? Priya pointed to a draft email on the tablet addressed to Daniel's accountant. Post-vow shareholder agreement terms. Attached was a PDF titled Pre-agreed liquidity option, Daniel's signature pending. The amounts were not small. This isn't panic, Priya said. It's a plan. My hands shook as I printed screenshots and wrote source/device/date, time on each page. The door handle turned, and Morgan stepped in asking what needed my signature. I told Morgan I was labeling vendor envelopes. She had the printer, then me. You overdue, she said lightly. It's your charm. She borrowed my lipstick and left a perfect crescent on a napkin. When she floated out, Priya whispered, We have a burner thread. She had found a messaging app tied to a number ending in 0472, saved under work. The conversation with E used phrases like deliverables and post-event terms, but the attachments were not invoices. One clip, muted, 32 seconds, showed the photo booth curtain opening on Morgan's dress, Ethan's hand at her waist, his wedding-appropriate suit jacket on the booth seat like a flag. The timestamp read 1942 last night, during their vendor check. We copied the file to a fresh USB into my encrypted drive. We kept chain of custody notes because I work with grant compliance, and old habits save futures. Priya found a payment confirmation, $1,200 to Skyline Beauty Suite 904 at 017, payer M. Carter, card ending 8013, memo hair kit overnight. The hotel would say that was a private room fee. We added it to the timeline. We take this to Daniel now, Priya said. Before vows means fewer people harmed. I imagined Daniel's face breaking in a church office while violins warmed up outside. I also imagined Morgan's fury, a hurricane fed by cameras. If we do this privately, it can get buried, I heard myself say. Gaslit. Spun as jealousy. He might still walk out there. Priya swallowed. Your call, Jamie, she said. But evidence this clean should not die in whispers. My phone buzzed. Unknown nearby airdrop again. I declined. It buzzed again. I accepted. A single line of text appeared over a blurred photo. You show this, you lose us all. The photo resolved to the two of us at 19, arms flung around each other after an exam we thought we failed. I stared at our younger faces while the projector in the ballroom flickered awake. Breadcrumbs turned into a trail you could follow with a blindfold. Rideshare logs placed Morgan at the hotel's back entrance last night at 11:52 p.m. and again today at 12:36 p.m. The florist's private bouquet, aligned with a departure through the service corridor documented by a security camera snippet Mr. Ruiz replayed for me at 12:45. Morgan in a silk robe and slippers, sunglasses at noon like a punchline. You didn't get this from me, he said, but handed me a letter stating the time and camera ID. The photo booth vendor printed the full log with timestamps. The gap between 1941 and 1945 matched the clip Priya pulled. The invoice edit trail from the florist showed the change was requested from an IP address linked to the hotel Wi-Fi network at 11:03 p.m. The alias E. Howell appeared on the suite receipt. A phone call from the front desk at 8:17 confirmed the booking signature matched the ID on file for an Ethan Howell from the same firm as Daniel. We didn't dig for motive. The pattern screamed what? On the tablet, a draft text to Ethan read, After vows, you push him to sign. If he delays, leak the photos to force it. Complicity sat like a stone in my throat. Priya squeezed my shoulder. We've crossed maybe and probably, she said. Where at is? I printed a one-page brief. Simple terms, bold times, sources listed. I added, what would you want someone to do for you? At the bottom, because plain facts do not erase shaking hands. A knock at the sacristy door interrupted my checklist. Reverend Hale stepped in, robes rustling. "Mr. Ruiz said you needed a quiet moment," he said gently. I looked at his kind face and saw a lifeline or a witness. "We need 10 minutes with Daniel in the office," I said. "And a screen." He didn't flinch at the words we chose next. He nodded once and said, "Then we must be very, very clear. The mini-twist wasn't that Morgan cheated. It was the structure behind it. She was marrying Daniel for leverage, his startup shares, which would unlock a line of credit to extinguish her private debt." Priya's Trace pulled up a collection notice for $84,600 from a boutique lender called North Bay Capital, due by the end of the month. A note in Morgan's draft email referenced visa stability for Ethan's work visa tied to Daniel's company would be safer if he appeared indispensable. The plan read like a bad movie. Marry Daniel, push a post-nuptial shareholder agreement immediately after the kiss, and if Daniel hesitated, deploy proof of an emotional entanglement that positioned Morgan as the injured party and Daniel as disloyal. The burner thread included drafted messages to gossip accounts with time-stamped photos labeled insurance. I stared at the language like it could rearrange into something less cold. This wasn't just infidelity, it was weaponized image. Daniel's parents were old school. A scandal would fracture their trust and scare conservative investors, pressuring him to sign. Priya circled a line. If he signs within the hour, releases stop. I wanted to vomit. We made a list of stakes. Daniel's finances, his reputation, the startup's 20 employees, and, petty but real, my mortgage application next month if a defamation crossfire splashed onto my employer. We weren't heroes. We were people with printer paper and a choice. "We show him first," I said finally. "We try to save private dignity before public spectacle." Priya nodded. "But if he's prevented from acting, we escalate." We packed the packet, the USB, and the timeline into a folder with adhesive tabs. My hands remembered to bring tissues. I prayed that would be the most useful thing. Then Kelsey locked the sacristy door from the outside and killed the lights. The lock clicked like a period at the end of a threat. "We're not prisoners," Priya said, and pointed at a second door that opened into the choir loft. We slipped into a hallway smelling of wood polish and old hymnals. At the office, Reverend Hale had Daniel waiting with his tie undone and his palms flat on the desk, like a man bracing for wind. I shut the door and put the packet down. "I'm about to show you something terrible," I said. "It will feel like falling." He nodded once, jaw set. I spoke simply, like narrating a first aid lesson. "These are receipts, messages, and a 32-second clip. The dates are last night and today. The accounts belong to Morgan and Ethan. The money moves from her card. The locations are this hotel." He didn't ask how I got them. He asked, "Is it doctored?" Priya answered, "We checked metadata and cross-reference times. We can bring in the venue manager and the booth vendor if needed." I slid the brief across and turned the monitor so he could watch the muted video. He watched once, then again, and put his hand over his mouth. He stayed quiet a long time. Finally, he said, "I don't want the staff or guests shamed. I don't want a scene." I believed him because he picked up a tissue and handed it to me first. "What do you want?" I asked. He looked down at his tie and said, "I want to stop this and still be kind." We sketched a plan. He would ask Morgan to step into the office with Reverend Hale as witness. We would present facts calmly. He could call the wedding off without exposing anyone. If Morgan refused or spun, we would take the proof to Mr. Ruiz and request a private pause. If that failed, we would go public. The contingency sat between us like an unlit flare. Then someone pounded on the door and shouted that the procession had started early. We didn't get our 10 minutes. Morgan slipped into the office like a gust, veil trembling, perfume first. "What emergency?" she asked, eyes scanning for props she could turn into a joke. Daniel stood, steady. "I need to show you something," he said. "Then we choose our next step." I laid out the 3 pages and the still image. Morgan barely glanced. "Deep fake," she said, waving a manicured hand. "You two are obsessed with me." Priya spoke evenly. "We can bring Mr. Ruiz and the booth vendor to confirm logs, and the front desk to confirm the suite signature." Morgan's chin lifted. "I paid for a room for hair supplies, because your planning was sloppy," she said to me, sweet as acid. "And if Ethan was nearby, it's because he's helping Daniel. Don't pathologize proximity." Daniel's voice stayed low. What about this draft to my accountant, he asked. She looked, finally. Her mouth thinned. We discussed combining accounts for efficiency, she said. You never listen when I talk money. He nodded like he'd expected the script. I'm calling this off, he said. Morgan laughed, cold. You'll humiliate your mother, she said. Investors will ask why you left a good woman, and I won't be kind. The threat fell like a hammer. For a second, I wavered. What if we were about to start a fire we couldn't control? Priya squeezed my arm. Reverend Hale stepped forward. We can make an announcement of postponement, he offered gently. No details. Morgan turned on me. You do this, you lose me, she said. All of us. The hallway outside rose in volume. The quartet repeating the measure. Guests murmuring. Kelsey's voice demanding updates. Daniel reached for the door. Morgan grabbed his sleeve. She hissed. If you walk out now, the photos go live in minutes. The trap was already set. We only had to spring it in the right direction. Mr. Ruiz, I said into my phone, we need that tech check now? He ushered us into the small AV room off the ballroom with efficient calm. Neutral space, he said. Screens, audio off. I asked him to stay and called the photo booth vendor, who arrived with a tablet and said, I'll confirm logs and device IDs. We invited one neutral witness, and who had always liked me because I label leftovers at parties. Daniel stood close to the wall, color gone but posture steady. Morgan paced like a caged influencer. This is ridiculous, she announced to the dozen people who now occupied a space meant for cables. Priya slotted the USB into the projector, disabled audio, and pulled up the timeline. These are the facts, she said, and read each line like a pilot checklist. Dates, times, sources, locations. Mr. Ruiz nodded at the security clip ID. The booth vendor said, That's our booth. That's our timestamp. That's the gap. Anne's hand was a tremor on her purse. Morgan's face stayed still until Priya opened the draft messages labeled insurance. Something in Morgan broke then, or maybe just slipped. Do you know what it takes to be safe? She snapped at Daniel. To not be held hostage by men with equity and egos. The righteousness almost worked on me. Almost. Daniel said softly. You could have asked for help. Morgan turned to me. You owe me, she said, like a final gamble. After everything I gave you. I thought of the late-night ramen and the coins flicked at a busker. I lifted the remote, breathed once, and told Mr. Ruiz to dim the lights. The screen came alive with evidence, but I kept it short. 30 seconds that didn't require imagination. The booth vendor confirmed the device handshake. Mr. Ruiz confirmed the camera location. Priya confirmed the EXIF data. The muted clip played, the booth curtain opening like a curtain call for truth. Gasps broke through the AV room's insulation. No narration, no accusations. Just timestamps, geography, and hands where vows were supposed to go. Morgan lunged for the laptop. Priya stepped between them. Don't, she said quietly. Morgan switched targets. You wanted this, she spat at me. You don't get a spotlight, so you burn the stage. I swallowed the urge to confess how right she was about my need to matter. It wasn't about me. Daniel's voice was calm as rain. I'm postponing the ceremony, he said to Mr. Ruiz and Reverend Hale. Please inform guests that we love them and need privacy. Morgan laughed. Farrell. I'll post first, she said, fingers flying across her phone. Priya held up the burner tablet. Not from this number, she said, and finally spoke, voice aching. We can choose dignity, she said. Even now. Morgan's mask cracked thin. You think he didn't flirt with Priya? She shouted, reaching for random shrapnel. Priya blinked, then shook her head once. Daniel pinched his eyes shut, then opened them to me. Thank you, he said, like a benediction I didn't deserve. Mr. Ruiz nodded to staff at the door. The quartet faded. The doors stayed closed. Morgan's sister pounded from the hallway. Open up, she cried. Morgan squared her shoulders, chin high, and put her hand on the doorknob like she could reverse time by touching brass. Her phone lit up with Ethan's new message. Abort. Board already notified. The fallout spread faster than confetti in a ceiling fan. The ceremony dissolved into careful announcements and casseroles of sympathy. Guests gathered their feelings and their favors. Morgan left with Kelsey, chin high like a pageant queen after a scandal-proof publicist. Online, a burner account tried to smear me within the hour, but the timestamps and logs we'd shared privately with Mr. Ruiz and were ready if we needed to defend ourselves. Daniel's investors sent a terse note. We support postponement, protect IP, counsel looped, and the company lawyer called to document Ethan's conflict. And hugged me so hard my ribs complained. I went home to my tiny apartment and its honest crooked floor, shut the door, and cried like a faucet someone forgot. The cost showed up in quiet ways. A bridesmaid unfriended me. A mutual friend texted, "Couldn't you have waited?" My manager at the nonprofit asked if I needed time off because public mess can bleed into grant work. I slept 2 hours and dreamed of hands tearing a veil. In the morning, Priya sent coffee and a link. North Bay Capital had updated Morgan's delinquency status to arrangements pending. Daniel asked for copies of everything and sent back a formal thank you with the kind of grace that does not trend. I still felt stained. I went to the park and let sun press my shoulders like a question. Did I do this for truth or to finally stand at the center? Maybe both. Reverend Hale texted, "Truth and kindness are not enemies. They are difficult partners." My mortgage pre-approval came through. I saved the PDF with relief that felt like guilt. I knew there would be lawyers, whispers, and long silences. I also knew I would answer only with documents and short sentences. That afternoon, Ethan called from a blocked number and asked to meet alone. I didn't meet Ethan. I sent his voicemail to Daniel's counsel and blocked the number. I booked a therapy appointment because I was not going to turn into a person who only exists in emergencies. The first session, I talked too fast and apologized for apologizing. The therapist, Dr. Chun, asked me to define loyalty without martyrdom. I wrote rules in a notebook. Help with conditions in writing. Protect the innocent even if it makes you unpopular. Refuse to be used as a human shield. When Daniel asked if I could sort his files for the lawyer, I said yes, after sending a short scope email, an hourly cap, and a clear end date. Boundaries felt like wearing shoes on gravel. Priya checked in with memes and, once, a photo of the projector screen black as a night ocean. "You did right," she said. Mr. Ruiz mailed me a note on venue stationery. Neutrality is not silence when safety is at stake. Morgan posted a carousel of sunrise photos with captions about resilience and envy. I didn't engage. I boxed the sash that said "Friend of Honor" and slid it under my bed until I could decide whether to keep it as a caution or toss it as a curse. At night, I imagined different universes. The one where I stayed quiet. The one where Daniel shrugged and signed. The one where Morgan told the truth before we had to. In all of them, I still had to figure out who I was without a job that proved it. I made a list. I am a person who labels leftovers and holds hands at hospitals and knows where the spare batteries live. A week later, a ring box appeared on my doormat with a note for me. Inside the box sat the sunflower band Daniel had chosen for Morgan, simple and bright around the curve. Under it, a note in tidy print. "Return to vendor or keep as a reminder. Your choice." D. Morning light pooled on my kitchen table like a quiet blessing. I held the ring between finger and thumb and thought about vows. The ones we make to other people and the ones we forget to make to ourselves. Loyalty without clarity is just a leash. Love without honesty is branding. If you're reading this because you're the reliable friend, here's what I learned. Keep receipts, literally and metaphorically. Write dates on conversations. Ask, what would I want done for me? Then do that, even if your voice shakes. Don't confuse being central to an event with being central to someone's care. Center kindness, not spectacle. I put the ring back in its box and walked to the jeweler when they opened at 9. The clerk didn't ask. He just nodded, processed the return, and slid a receipt toward me that said, in cool font, "Completed." On the way home, I stopped by the church and stood in the empty sanctuary while a janitor polished a pew. Sun through colored glass made stripes across my shoes. I exhaled. Then I texted Priya, "Breakfast?" She replied with a pancake stack emoji and, "Always. I am no hero. I am a person who did the next right thing with proof and a plan and paid for it with a thinner friend list and a thicker spine. If you're holding truth right now, please choose the light and hold steady."